$250,000 if you have that in a bank. And unless you have this 250,000 in separate accounts or separate banks, if you have more than that in a bank and it goes down, you're not going to be insured for that other amount of money. Most people don't have that kind of money, but if they do, the feds are not going to consider you to be too big to fail. You know what I mean? It's just going to be too bad. So I could go into a lot more of this. The key point is there is a crisis. It's a banking crisis. It's a part of a bigger capitalist crisis in the economy. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And when it comes to you, look out for your bottom line, whatever it is. Look out for it. If you got reserves, hold on to them. Is what you need. If you can, save something so you have something in reserve so you can get over a lot of hardship. I want to welcome Daphne McLeod Garvey. She's asking, is Wells Fargo Bank under siege? It's one of the big banks, and it's very likely that the government is going to look out for Wells Fargo. But if you got any more than 250,000 in a bank, then you need to either switch accounts so that it's in more than one account, or switch banks, and then pick one that is too big to fail, that they're likely to prop up. That's unfortunate too, because a lot of the smaller banks are the ones that have done some good things for people, and that includes credit unions and things like that. So so much for that. Now, the topic for today, part 2, is an extension of last week's show, the Yoruba spiritual philosophical conception of God. And the reason I put spiritual and philosophical is African philosophy is spirit-based. So a lot of us, when we think of philosophy, we think of it in European terms, and spirit and God's out of the picture. That's all African philosophy is about, but it deals with every dimension of life, whether it's the heavens or the earth, you and me, and it's very practical. So that was the topic last week, and identified certain central ideas that the Yoruba people have through their Babalaos. And Babalao literally means father of mysteries or mother of mysteries. Priests can be either male or female. The Babalaos are really the intellectuals of the Yoruba, though we now have them trained in the West who are coming from a different mindset, unless they're conscious. Babalawo is spelled Babalawo. Babalawo. Literally means father of mysteries. So Sister LaShonda Henderson asked a number of good questions. I was only able to address one, and that was on the impact of Yoruba culture on African American culture. She had a lot of other questions, but it wasn't possible for me to deal with all of those. And I really liked the questions, and it also got me to see another way that I need to approach this show. So, LaShonda, I really want to thank you for your questions and the way in which they were formulated, because they were designed to answer questions for the listening audience today. One of the things that I wasn't able to get into last week was one of the reasons why the Yoruba would be one of the groups that had a very significant impact on African American culture. A number did. Igbo, big influence. And we see the democratic aspect of Igbo culture, which runs through all African cultures in different ways, having a profound effect on African American culture. Asante, you know, and other Ghanaian cultures have had their profound effect on African American culture. The Bambara, which Malcolm's great grandfather was probably descended from warrior cultivators, builders, spirit people. They had, and a host of others. Um, the Niger Congo Bantu region provided a host of African cultures coming into the Americas and into the United States. But the Yoruba had a special impact. And one of the things that I didn't cover last week as a preface to this discussion today is I wanted to discuss three reasons that Michael Gomez, who is the author of the outstanding work Exchanging Country Marks, which is a book that deals on how African American culture was formed. And then if you look at my book, The Integration Trap, this book here, Generation Gap, Caused by a Choice Between Two Cultures, I have a near 90-page chapter on how our culture was formed. You should check that out because you've got a mighty culture running around here talking about you lost one. Gomez gives three reasons for why the Yoruba group, especially, had their impact not only in the U.S. but in the diaspora in the Western Hemisphere. First, he notes that the Fan Iwe Yoruba group came into the lower Mississippi at the same time as the Bambara and after the Bambara presence. So both are coming in around the same time, and they're both having their influence. But then he notes that these three groups had begun working out a cultural synthesis in Africa, and they were more culturally coherent than the Bambara. Particularly, he's referring to the Yoruba. So he's saying that this is a reason that Yoruba culture would have a greater impact on African American culture. And these three groups took hold in an urban port, New Orleans, where they gained an advantage and they were able to spread their culture more. Other parts of the US and in the Western Hemisphere. So these are three reasons that these cultures had an impact, but the Yoruba had a special impact. And then I would note that the Yoruba diaspora is very strong. So you have Yoruba in Cuba, you have Yoruba in Brazil, you have Yoruba in Haiti mixed heavily with Dahomian, and then Petro, which is Indian or Native American spirit culture, which is fierce. So there's a diaspora there. Now, the key point that Gomez doesn't point out, he probably knew, is that the reason that these cultures could be strong in these areas, particularly Cuba, Brazil, and Haiti, and in Louisiana, is Catholicism. Wherever you had Catholic countries, then a coherent African spirit system could prevail in a whole level or largely intact. Whereas if you had a Protestant system, such as you had in most of the United States or in Jamaica or in Barbados or in Trinidad, places like that, even though Trinidad has a stronger amount of African culture and spirit systems, and in this case, presence of the Yoruba, you're going to see a voodoo influence, but not as strong as you see in the Yoruba presence, which is straight up continuation of African practices. In the US, you end up with diviners having a very important influence. And then in Louisiana, voodoo with priests and priestesses who are able to do the divination and things like that. But there's another reason, and this is one that comes from my own observation. of Yoruba culture. And I've been into the Ifa system for nearly 50 years. I'm not initiated. My spirit doesn't want it, but I'm in it. And I'm also into a lot of other African spirit systems. But the Yoruba one is very important. The Yoruba, along with other Africans, have a very practical system, and a very flexible system. And so they've been able to survive even with the intrusion of Christianity and Islam. And even when some of their own people take on Christianity and Islam, Ifa, or the Yoruba system, is so deep that that's their first source. And so if you have a Christian who's a priest or a minister who's Yoruba, they will usually be consulting an Ifa priest for divination because that's their culture. So on the one hand, you have this survival where even when people convert, they still have a Yoruba traditional foundation. And then you have the persistence of people who stick with the Yoruba system. But this is the key point, and I've observed this with my Babalawo, Ifeyemi, who's been my Babalawo for nearly 50 years, a master diviner and a master scholar, written 10 books, poet, playwright. He's been in many movies in Nigeria. While he's a traditionalist and didn't go to university education, European university education, he's been able to put a daughter through medical school. He's been able to put another daughter through law school. When she went through, because he sent me pictures when his children are graduating, he said, the law. And she's got one of these wigs that you wear in the British system. And then he has a son who's an anthropologist. And then he has another daughter who just graduated. I made this point, I think, last week from a leading university in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and was here for her graduation, which also means that as an Ifa priest, he's been making enough money to look after his family. So what I'm saying there is one of the reasons why this system has remained strong is it's flexible. It's able to adapt to this so-called modern world where the European comes in with his stuff and at the same time continue their traditional system. Now, we know in Nigeria, it's corrupt to the core. You've got gangster operations going on there. The rulers have taken everything and stuck it in their pockets, and the people have got nothing, you know? So the Western system is strong, and it's going to have to be changed by drawing from the best of your own and updating it. And some of you don't believe so, because I hear some of these questions you're raising. You think everything that should be thrown out, the baby and the bathwater. And those are most of you that haven't been engaged in struggle, because you'll know that, as Amilcar Cabral said, the liberation movement is an active culture. An African American or new African culture is Africa at its core, at its foundation, its fundamental principles. And this culture always needs to be strengthened. So you draw from the best of your past. And Africa, as Chinwe Achebe said, things fall apart. Things have fallen apart. If you're going to put things back together, you're going to need in the puzzle some of the best of your stuff. And if you don't have it, you're going to see a continuation of blacks doing what whites did to us. Sometimes even worse, if you can conceive of that. If you look at what's happened in Africa, you should be able to see it with some of our leaders here. So I just want to add that so the Yoruba play their part in this cultural continuum here and play an important role in our own culture. So today, what I want to examine is another dimension of the spirit, the dimension called human destiny. Now, this show today was entitled A Comparison Between Yoruba, Asante, and Kemetic Ideas of Human Destiny. And the person who does the PR on this show likes to get information in early. So this time I got it in fairly early. And once I started going through laying the show out, I realized that no, that's not a good idea for me to take all of these three in one show. In addition, combining parapsychology, which is another area. And usually I don't send out any kind of promotional material until I've thought the show through. But I thought because I had done the first one, and yeah, this would be good. There's commonalities between Yoruba, Asante, and Kemet, and then parapsychology. Yeah, I could do it. But then once I started laying out, I said, no, I can't, you know? And so today, and I'm not making any apologies either, because we've been doing a disservice to cover all of this all at once. So today I'm going to focus again on the Yoruba and their conception of destiny. And then next week we'll go into Asante and Kemetic as well as parapsychology, and I'll be able to do that because I pretty well know how that's going to work. So that's what's happening today. So today, again, we're going to go back and look at the Yoruba conception, and you'll see commonalities when we look at this next week, but also unique differences. And that one of the reasons for the comparison is there's an African cultural unity. And so we have common conceptions of certain things around culture. And it's amazing because it spans north to south, east to west in Africa, But one of the reasons why you want to do comparative studies and not just focus on one culture, a lot of people are just stuck on Kemet. Well, if you are, fine, that's good. Some people, it's because it's their mission. Their mission is to really dig into that. But as Theophil Obenga said, Dr. Theophil Obenga, he and Diop did not make that mistake. They understood that Kemet's a part of inner Africa. And as I've shown, all African civilizations grow out of the Twa, the world's first people who give birth not only to the world's first civilization, but its highest. And it's most just. The Twa didn't have slavery ever. You hear me? So that's one reason that the comparison will be done, and next week we'll do more. And the other is when you're looking at one African civilization, you'll get a certain amount of depth. But when you look at another, you'll see another angle. It's like peeling an onion. And so each one gives you a window to another. And the key thing is, when you're dealing with African civilizations that are alive, they're going to tell you a lot more than one that is passed on, like Kemet. And everything in Africa didn't come from Kemet. And I'm not downplaying Kemet. I'm just simply saying, if that's where you exclusively locate everything, then unless it's your calling, and that's understandable, then you're missing a lot. You're really missing a lot. So for all of you who are viewing and listening and thinking about this question, then the real question that this question of destiny raises is, who am I and why am I here? That's the real question that the question of destiny raises. What's my purpose on earth? That's the real fundamental question that is being raised. And I want to say this as a preface. There are a lot of spirit systems out there, and when Blacks, we're like somebody who's drowning, whatever, lifeboat we can catch, we'll grab it. And so a lot of us have grabbed a lot of different spirit lifeboats, and I'm not knocking it. And if they got something to offer that helps you, good. So some of them have offered you meditation. Africans don't generally use the meditative thing, but that's good. That gets you into your peace. And these systems say, the Hindu system, mindfulness, so that's a good thing. And others are giving you reasons for why you're here. And that may or may not be good depending on the accuracy of it. What I want to say about these African systems is this: they not only share a common unity, they are original. You don't see what I'm discussing today. You don't see this in any other spirit system. You'll see an angle of it, like you'll see the reincarnation angle, and then the reason for it, which is something you have to really look at and see if that's accurate. But the emphasis on destiny here, you don't see it there. Why? One is the African civilizations and people go back to the root. So we're getting back to the foundation. And then we're drawing from the root people, the Twa. And then the root civilizations that follow from that, the agrarian systems that follow from that. And so what happens is, what I'm going to be discussing today isn't some theory that somebody just came up with in their head. This has been based on investigation, spirit investigation, that is as serious or maybe more as the material investigation that you find in Western systems. Wolf Manlew is saying that Dr. Finch's book on ancient Egypt, 10,000 years, that just come out, and I've been trying to order it. I'm going to get it. I'm sure it's a good book. He's smart, because our historians have been stalled in limiting their look to 32, 33, 3100 BC. I want to look at it. In fact, I want to have him on this show. So he's one of our best scholars. He's very good. And you're going to note something with me. While this is the Dr. Obutashaka show, I give credit where credit is due. And there's some heavyweights out there, and he's one of the real heavyweights. And he doesn't get enough credit for his work. His Star of Deep Beginnings is a masterwork, focusing on the Dogon and astrophysics. And because he's a medical doctor, his grounding in science is good. So he's able to bring that in giving you a better understanding of Dogon thought. So the African systems are based on spirit investigation. And they know the spirit realm as well as they know the material realm, and better even than a lot who just exclusively focus on the material realm. And so what I'm discussing today, this isn't just theory. And I'm going to give you, next week, we'll come at it from different angles, and you'll see the angles that continue to confirm this. And then if you check yourself out, some of you already know this is solid stuff. This is not theory as in an idea that may be right or wrong, or a hypothesis. This is not that. This is solid. And this solid thing answers the big question of who am I and why am I here? Now, we're living in a materialistic society. It's crooked, as Malcolm said, as a pretzel, as a million pretzels. It has no value for spirit. Yet it knows, those that run the country know spirit's a reality. CIA has got spirit warriors out there trying to find secrets in other countries. The Russians have been doing this forever. You know what I mean? But if you're going to a psychiatrist telling them you had an out-of-body experience, if they can commit you, you might get committed. Right in California, they don't do committing now because Reagan threw everybody in the streets that had any kind of mental disorder. So you're going to be regarded as crazy because you're talking about spirit. Spirit what? Because psychology under Freud is anti-spirit. Freud said he had to remove this from psychoanalytic theory. So for them, you're into spookism. So when we're looking at the question of destiny, we're looking at our purpose. Why are we here on earth? Now, when I first started doing this show, a young sister who was a viewer, she sent a message, and the message was, she said, I feel like I'm broken. I feel like I'm broken. And I understood what she's coming from, because that's what the system has tried to do, whether you're talking about enslavement, which was literally trying to break you, or this system that does the same thing. It doesn't just do it to blacks, it does it to everybody, but it has a special agenda for you and me, African people, Native Americans, and people of color. So feeling broken, that's coming from a system that's trying to break you, and in numerous ways. So, and this system that's trying to break you is a system that is structured to make those on top happy, even though material things don't always make you happy, by getting most of the goodies, by sucking everything up. So the small, greedy few that founded this country and set the structure of this, the political structure up, and the economic structure based on enslavement, where they got free capital, our labor, to get rich on. So what it does is it sucks the goodies up so that the average person doesn't have the basic things they need to live: enough food, clothing, and shelter. And on the planet, the average person is living on $2 a day or less. And then the geeky Bill Gates going around giving people instructions on what they need to do to better their lives and acting like he's a good guy. He says he's going to give away all his wealth. Well, you shouldn't have had all that wealth to begin with. Because when you got billionaires, nearly trillionaires, then it means you've got a whole bunch of hungry people. You hear me? And so this is part of what breaks you down. There's a material impoverishment that makes it difficult to just enjoy your life. Look at the homeless people we see all over the country. This is a third world country now, you know? Why? You've got people who have jobs. The jobs don't pay enough for them to pay rent. And then you've got people in various other states of impoverishment. And then some with psychological problems. All the homeless are not psychologically disturbed, but the psychologically disturbed need care. But they are disturbed psychologically because this is a sick system. It drives people mad. So the system we're living under doesn't just attack material well-being, it attacks people's dreams. It attacks their inner wishes. Too many gifted people today, Black, are considering suicide. Too many. And those of us who say we don't have a culture, you explain this to me. If we don't have a culture, why isn't our suicide rate as high as whites or Native Americans? The Native Americans have a culture, but because of their defeat and the desolate places they're put on, reservations and everything, drives them to drink consciously, knowing that that's going to lead to their death and other forms of suicide. But as I pointed out before, between 7 and 11-year-olds, now among that age group, the suicide rate among Black 7 to 11-year-olds is the highest. That's telling you that there are cracks in your own culture. That's because that culture has given you optimism and a reason to survive. That's telling you that young people, who are the most optimistic group that any culture has, are not seeing a future. When they walk outside their door, as when we did the interview on Independent Black Schools, the school we operate, African Children's Advanced Learning Center, one of our former students said, you know, and he was talking about what he faced in the 80s. When you walked out the door, you didn't see anything that was going to promote your life. That's what the system has done. Your communities are being busted up. They're dropping drugs all around you. You got a lot of people hanging out on the street because they ain't a job worth working for. A lot of people locked up. You know what I mean? And so these kids are seeing that. And the most endangered of our youth, and it's not just 7 to 11-year-olds, but I think some of the most endangered are some of the smartest. I was having this discussion with a good friend of mine, Ola Minji, who lives in Chicago, a brilliant brother. And, we were sharing that. And he said, yeah, he agreed. Because they really see what's happening. You hear me? And so it can drive some of them to suicide, despair. It can drive them to delusion or just feeling like there's no purpose in life. And again, suicidal thoughts come out of that. So when we're talking about destiny and why are we here, some of us who have these great gifts are in despair. Some of us don't have a sense of purpose in our life, or if we do, we feel that it can't be achieved. And so this drives us into these crises. So not all Black people, not all people are committing or, considering suicide, but they're going through educational systems that don't prepare them to be their self. It prepares them to serve others, to be kind of slaves in a system. Gerard says, in reference to Broken, many melanated across the diaspora find and feel this way. Systemically, a caste system in India, the Dalits are seen as oppressed and broken. That's a real good point. I've been making that point before. Not everybody's been getting it. The Dalits are the people that ran a highly evolved civilization that the Aryans came in and took and put them in a situation worse than slavery, a category below slavery, and took an African occupational system called caste and converted it into a color system called Varna. And so those Dalits, who are the black-skinned people, who evolved all the ideas that your gurus are now preaching, who are sometimes light or brown skinned but identify as Aryans, they're ground to the dust. But they're also coming back. They're fighting back. They're in southern India. And by the way, those Africans who have a high regard for themselves and have been broken but are coming back, the key to their salvation is the love and respect they have for their women. Because one of the keys to the Aryan who came in and ran their stuff on them is their patriarchy and their war and their hatred for blackness. Their hatred. That's the first case of racism in the world. India, the Indo-Aryan invasion. You hear me? Some of y'all caught up in the systems that have been taught by the people who expropriated this culture. You need to be careful what you're getting. And if you don't know the Aryan inside out, you can be getting the wrong side and thinking you got the good. So you need to be grounded in your own stuff so you understand what you can take and dip and dab from others. So we have a system that is designed to work against your life purpose, your destiny, who you are, your even knowledge of it or belief that you have one. It's designed to instill in you that the only value is get this education and get a job. Do whatever you can and, just, have a few goodies and everything's all right. And then most people don't have it. So some young people say, you got it, I'll take it from you. Get into that. You know what I mean? So that's a reality of the society at large. Everybody doesn't buy into it, but that's the reality. So in examining the meaning and purpose of God, of destiny, it's important to also distinguish between levels of self-knowledge. Um, one level of self-knowledge that we often exclusively deal with, and even when we're talking about spiritual, we're really only limiting ourselves to that, is the cultural level and the historical level. This is the level of identity forged by either a knowledge or weakened by a lack of knowledge of your history and culture. And culture includes your way of life and design for living. So for African people, Africans in the US and the diaspora, wherever we are, knowing our history is very important because it's the key to self-knowledge, self-respect, and self-love. And when you know yourself, in this case, your ethnic self, you're empowered. That gives you strength. And that's the key to love. Self-love is the basis for all love. Um, a lot of us will say we love God. God comes first. But if you haven't placed yourself and your people first, it's going to be very hard for you to love God, you know, because it's going to be very hard for you to love, because all love starts at home with self. So, and that's unconditional love. That means accepting yourself the way you are and then working on what it is that needs to be worked on. So this is one dimension that is important of self-knowledge. But some of us restrict ourselves solely to that level. Now, we know that the level of identity, cultural and historical, has been messed with by our oppressors, because when they get control of your present, they're able to go in and rewrite and distort your historical and cultural past. And they'll get you to think that, yeah, because we got the upper hand on you, all the stuff you got, you need to throw out. You need to go with us. You know what I mean? Huh. And then you'll find out when you go with them, you're not them anyway, you know, and you're on the bottom and you're being abused and everything else. And it's not doing you any good, you know? So, knowledge of self is key. And the key thing you gain from knowledge of self is foresight and hindsight, and the ability to see yourself through your own eyes. Foresight, to see ahead, that comes from seeing from way behind. And then to see yourself through your own eyes. Lao Tzu says, perhaps we have narrowly defined intelligence. Can we add to it that intelligence is the ability to solve problems? If we added this, perhaps we would develop differently. Yeah, it's that. But it's also, there are levels of intelligence. And I had a show that I did on this, and it was dealing with the servant mind and then the higher mind. And the West operates on the servant mind. I mean, if you're looking just at what the feds are doing right now, that's the servant mind. In that they're looking at one thing, inflation. Now, deliberately so, because they can tame a lot of problems with this, which is basically the people, make it more miserable for them. But the servant mind sees things in parts. The mind with exceptional intellectual clarity that the Kemites call Sia is able to see the connections. It's the whole mind. And when you've connected to God's mind, you'll realize that anything you get from God is the whole of a part. My little twin lineal thing, which is real key to revitalizing African families, communities, and nations, and the world for that matter, from unjust to just, that comes from God's mind. And the systems that God explained to me were the basis for just societies. male, female, equal empowerment in all phases of society. That's a whole. That's the everything in anything. That's the seer mind. You got to pipe into God's mind to get there. So solving problems, yeah, that's a part of it. But you better understand if that's all it is, you are also into American pragmatism. Yeah, they're real good at solving an immediate problem. And the question is for who? They'll sell you on the idea for everybody. I'm going to just depart, Lao Tzu, and answer a question that you sent in. What do I think about this candidacy for president of Cornel West? I think it's stupid. And I think it's backward that in a close presidential election where it could go either way, and this crook could get back into the White House, but this is a crypto fascist, that you're going to be putting other candidates out there that can split the vote. That is why Trump is going to win the primaries, because a bunch of candidates are running against him, but he also has a solid base. And that solid base is going to come through for him. You understand? And Cornel West, I appreciate a lot of his little radical ideas. He ain't got no alternatives, but he's got a critique. He's pro all the things he should be, the feminists, the gays, the blacks. He ain't got the slightest idea of African culture at all. But, you know, he's a nice guy. But why didn't you pull this at another time? Why are you pulling this now? You know, I think that's bad. But I think he's also coming from this lower servant mind. He's been trained in the Ivy League Academy. He sees things in one dimension. So I'm sure he's going to roll out a lot of reasons why you should vote for him. Yeah, sure. Suppose 2 million blacks vote for him and a few others. Huh. In a narrow election, what's that going to lead to with all the vote rigging that's going on right now? So solving things, I agree with Lao Tzu. Yeah, you should be able to solve things. But if that's the limit, you're in American pragmatism. And American pragmatism is the only philosophy with no principles. You better have some principles guiding your life. And Sister Nzinga Dugas, who are so proud to see now chairing or being the tenured faculty in Contra Costa College's African American Studies Department. Welcome, lady. Yeah, what are we solving? Little micro mini things. But yeah, you know, solving something's important. But that's not enough. So cultural identity is very important. And we need to be able to see ourselves through our own eyes. And we need to see the beauty that's before us, that's reflected in our own images, the images of our people. Whatever we're doing that brings beauty to the world, but you're going to have your own bifocals on. And so the more you can see of your past, the further ahead you can see, the better you can see yourself and see the beauty within you. And here we're talking about the beauty within our culture of this concept of why we were here, destiny. So knowing your ethnic and historical identity is extremely important. But it's very important to distinguish between historical identity as Africans and your spirit essence. Very important to distinguish between these two. And see, we like to play with this term spiritual, and that's okay, but you're intellectualizing this. And there's no word for spiritual in any African language because it's the spirit that we experience. And it's the spirit that's in our body that makes this body live. And when the spirit, all the spirits we have that sustain us, leave us, we're finished. And the last one is a spirit of breath. When you can't breathe anymore, it's gone. And all African systems say that God put spirit inside of you along with all these other things. So when we're examining this African idea, and in this case, the Yoruba idea of destiny, we're examining the essence of spirit, a particular dimension of spirit. We are all spirits in a body. That's what a human being is, and all entities that God creates, animate and inanimate. That spirit that sustains them, that quantum physics would call waves and particles or energy. That's the spirit. So when we're looking at destiny, and in this case from the Yoruba perspective, then we're looking at your essence as a human being on this earth. Now, I want you to really get this. These ideas of destiny, while they're unique to African people, they describe a human experience. All humans go through this. I know some of you think that, only we have this. That's what you want to hold on to. But no, here we're getting into a universal realm. But here, because our culture is so old, our history is so old, and we've had some people to draw from who were pure spirits, we get into the deeper dimension. But then, as Dr. Obenga points out when he's looking at Kemet, he points out that almost everything in Kemetic civilization, for example, that's abstract is conveyed concretely. So, for example, hati or ib, heart. It means a lot of different things, heart, mind. I have a series that went on that. Check it out. It's a higher mind inside of you. It's the God within you. But when it's conveyed, it's a picture of a heart. Practical. It's abstract. It's talking about the higher mind that comes from the heart, but then it's practical. It's dealing with the heart because the Kemites knew the body and they had studied it. Imhotep was the genius, the multi-genius of that. So when we're looking at this idea of destiny, the abstract is very practical. Everything that I'm going to explain here applies to how it works. And we're going to cross-reference it next week and then look at parapsychology and other spirit systems, and we'll see the same stuff running through them. And then you look at yourself, because some of you already realize this without ever having been in any Ifa system or any African system. So this concept of destiny is unique to African knowledge, deep knowledge, and it is useful. You want to talk about practical? This is as practical as it gets. Why am I here? What is my purpose? So, why is this understanding important for you? It reveals that you have the powers inside yourself to determine and shape your life. Some of you already know that because that's what you're doing. Some of you already know it because that's what you're not doing. And you should be doing it. You hear what I'm telling you? Huh? You're on the path you don't like being on. And you could get off of it. But you're on it. That's your choice. That's the key thing about destiny. So that's the key thing about this, that this knowledge that Africans have here is unique, but it's describing an experience that's universal. You hear me? Because God used this same process for creating all human beings. So some of you know why you're here because you've listened to your dreams. You've listened to your wishes and you tried to pursue them, some straight out, some after a while. And that's really the key to destiny. It's your wish. It's that which drives you inside, your inner desire. the thing that makes you most happy or things. And I'm talking about the inner things. I'm not talking about material things that pick you up in the morning and put you asleep at night. That's the driving force in your life. And when you're pursuing that, that's that's happiness. We're looking for happiness in other places, somebody else, something. It's happiness. One, to know who you are, that is, your gifts, your desires, and to pursue it. And those are the real joys in life. And if you can achieve it to whatever degree you can achieve it, that is true happiness. And yes, there is opposition. And yes, there have been times where it was very difficult for any of our people to pursue their dreams. Very difficult. You're talking about enslavement. You're talking about this 100-year period of post-Reconstruction where blacks was confined to servile stuff. You know what I mean? Some could break out of that, but most were confined to that. So yeah, we faced that kind of opposition. But guess what? You're going to find out in a minute. People chose to come here to address that. They didn't choose for that to happen. They didn't want that to happen. But it's brave spirits, because every spirit on Mother Earth is brave. They came here with a mission, with a purpose. They could have stayed back in heaven. And some people will say, man, they're in some homeless shelter out cold in the street. Why didn't I stay there? But you have some spirits who are homeless that are purposely so. Don't get me wrong. I'm not excusing the system that oppresses them. But there are some people who are experiencing oppression who are high spirits, who are here on a mission to help uplift others. It's a lot of people who fall down in the pit, who, when they pull themselves up, they're the ones that can provide the greatest help. And some of them are around right now. So I want to deal with the Yoruba conceptions of destiny, and next week we'll confirm it in other ways. But I want to give their basic understandings of it, and then you can look at yourself and see how does it apply to you. So the Yoruba, because they have this spirit orientation in their culture, and many other Africans do. When the Yoruba succeed or fail in something, it's a common expression that the Yoruba will have, and many other Africans will as well. They will say, this is due to this brother or sister's predetermined choice made in heaven. In other words, they're saying a pattern to somebody's life. And so they may see them continuing to fail in something, or they may see them succeed in something or continue to. And they will see in that a predetermined pattern, a predetermined wish that has dictated that. Now, so destiny for the Yoruba is tied to certain concepts. You should write these down. If you have a pen or a paper, you should write this down. One is called Ayuomo, A-Y-I-U-M-O, A-Y-I-U-M-O, A-Y-I-U-M-O. It means choice. Very important. This word choice is central to the Yoruba, to the Akan, to the Kemetic, to the African conception of destiny. Choice. Choice. Sometimes it's called EPIN. I-P-I-N. I-P-I-N. EPIN. It means predetermined share. Now, what does that mean? That means in choosing destiny, We all get our share, but it's your choice. It's your share. That's your life, especially when you are trying to fulfill your choice. Or sometimes it's called Kadara, 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 which means divine share. That is pretty much the same as predetermined share. It's just telling you it's coming from a divine place. You hear me? Or it can be described as Ipori, Ipori, which means inner head. You'll see why that's important. Ipori. So, predetermined choice can be, there are a number of different words for describing it. One is ayumo, choice, ipen, predetermined share, kadara, divine share, or ipori, meaning inner head, inner head. The key point is all of these terms for predestination has underneath them choice. And then what you get when you make the choice, which is a predetermined share, a divine share. So this is also suggesting that this idea of destiny is divine. It's a part of divinity. It's sacred. It's of a spirit essence. And that's why when we're talking about self-knowledge, now we're getting to the core of what self-knowledge is. Self-knowledge is, of course, knowing the world we have created, the cultural, the historical world we have created. But it's going into the foundation, the spirit that drives that. So all of this leads to the central concept, which is at the essence of the Yoruba concept of destiny, which is Ori, O-R-I, Ori, O-R-I. You could say Yoruba culture is an Ori culture. Ori culture symbolizes free choice. The free choice that humans made in heaven. It's defined as the Ori is each human being's personal God. Personal God. That personal God is the one that looks out for the human's well-being, looks out for the human's personal affairs. This Ori is the most important part of the spirit domain because it is the part that is yours. It is the part that looks out for you. It is that part of you that when any kind of problem is on the horizon, it warns you. And everybody has this. I've given this example over and over again when I think it was the 87 earthquake. Was it 87? I'm supposed to be at a PhD program 4 hours before. I'm in Black Studies department. And the spirit says, leave. That's my protective spirit telling me. It didn't say it in words. The feeling conveyed that. I knew what it meant. We all have these feelings. And I said, oh, I'll be sitting in this office for 3 hours. It'll take me an hour to get there. It's 4 hours. Why should I do that? Then I thought, I said, spirit never leads me wrong. I left 3 hours early. As I pointed out before, when I left, had I left for the 4-hour appointment, the Bay Bridge had opened up. The Dunbarton Bridge, each of which I had been gone over, had collapsed. People said, nobody told me this. Nobody told me this. Yes, it did. You have stopped listening to this for so long that you just don't hear what is being told to you from your inner spirit. So Ori is the personal God within each person that guides us. And if you listen to it, it will help you. I was in a meeting in Europe giving a speech, and brother was in the audience. He's from Suriname. This is the area that the Dutch enslaved Africans in. And afterwards, he drove me home, and he said he could see my protective spirit. He said, it's fierce. It's fierce. We all have protective spirits. I was in Ghana and was in a village. And so this Ghanaian priest was coming by and responding to each spirit. When he came to me, he moved back because he could feel it. My spirit's been looking out for me. And in fact, this guy in Europe, he made the comment, he said, there have been times where the government was going to kill you and your spirit led you in another direction. I know the times where they tried and they didn't get away with it, but that's possible, But the point is, Ori is the personal God that each person has inside themselves, and that is concerned solely with your well-being. And everybody has a protective spirit that's called Ori and others to look out for you as well. Ori, the Yoruba describe Ori as the physical head that you pick in heaven. And the Yoruba will say you could make right or wrong choices. You have to make the right choice in heaven to have a good head. So literally it means head. Now, obviously in heaven, when you're making this choice, you have not materialized as a physical being. So this is head, but it is not the head that the physical head that we have later. But Ori symbolizes head. So that's one meaning. It's telling you, according to the Yoruba, that this concept of destiny resides in your head. But Ori is also the invisible head. It's called Ori Inu, Oriinu, Oriinu, Ori Inu. It's the internal head. Now that's the real head. It's the spirit head. It's the inner person. It's your real self. Ori Inu is described as the essence of personality. Now this is real key. Western psychology serves its role. It has its place. It's good for dealing with sickness. It's good with dealing with disorders and stuff like that. But it is not good at really understanding the human personality in its total dimensions. And Ori is describing the essence of the human personality. That is the inner being of a person, the inner gifts of a person, the inner strengths and the inner weaknesses of a person, the inner wish, the dream, which is why you're here, to try and pursue. What's comparable to that is the astrological chart. Now, Yoruba don't use that, but Dogon do. And the Akan people also have knowledge of astronomy and astrology. And that is, again, at the time you picked your destiny in heaven and choose to leave, that's the alignment of the planets at that time, because you're in a realm outside of space and outside of time. But to come to a place of time, you pick an alignment of energies where planets are interacting in a certain way that you can have the best chance to fulfill what you are coming to the planet for. There was a question that one of the viewers asked Lao Tzu. He asked, is there such a thing as collective destiny? Yoruba generally, when they're giving a reading, they're giving a personal reading because they're dealing with each person's personal destiny. But there is such a thing as collective destinies. And generally, I'll describe that in the next show. But yes, there are collective destinies. And yes, but you are generally, when you're dealing with this, you're going to deal with your part. What is it you're contributing? And we generally call this generations. So generations come in with certain needs, with certain interests, and so forth. So Ori then is the free choice made by humans in heaven. And the choice is their personal God. So Ori Inu is the internal head. It is the internal person. It is the real person within someone or the potential person. Because when you come down here, you have the choice to pursue those wishes or not to. And everybody doesn't pursue their wishes. So Ori Inu, when you are pursuing your wish and your path, it guides your life activities because you're going to find a groove that you move into. And when you're pursuing that, then it governs your life. So you see me, I'm pursuing my Ori Inu, before I ever knew Ifa, because I discovered my purpose before I knew Ifa. There are two types of people when it comes to choosing destiny: those that don't know and those that know. I'm in the first group, those that didn't know. My mother was in the second group. She knew. Either way, it's what you do when you discover what you're here for. And those come through door opening experiences for those that don't know. And so my book on Seba is dealing with the system of teaching that opens the door to your inner light. That's what real education is. Mine didn't come through the classroom. It came through joining the Black freedom movement, the Black power movement. And I discovered my purpose because I had an unorthodox purpose. So how was I, ain't nobody raising me saying you're going to lead some movement or you're going to be a strategist and you're going to go out here and fight the system. We didn't have too many of those that we could identify to begin with. We were just opening up the real battles. We had them in enslavement. We had them in Africa, but right now people weren't preparing for that. And a lot of people have unorthodox destinies. I mean, you can't describe it as a profession. Destiny can be a profession or not. If it's a profession, you're fulfilling your wish in doing it. But if it's not, it's the things you're doing in life to help others that give you joy and happiness, where you're using the gifts that you have to shine on other people. So that's destiny works in different ways for different people. So knowing your passion is real key. And then some of us, for various reasons, are taken off our path, off our wish. One of the greatest reasons is trying to please others. One of the worst things you can do. Or being inclined to do so, which is an indication of a lack of self-confidence. You're always looking to somebody else to tell you what they think you should do. You know, it's all right to listen, but the question is, what does your heart say? And the Yoruba would say, what does your head say? What does your wish say? Is that in line with what you want? Because if it isn't, it can look so good to everybody else. But if you're not in line with it, it will be misery. So there are a lot of ways in which we get taken off our path. We're under oppressive conditions. We're abused. Things happen to us, and it takes us off, and sometimes permanently off. And then sometimes people use that as a stepping stone to achieve their wishes. So in the end, a lot of this has to do with your choice. The essence of Ori is expressed through its power as, in another Yoruba term, Orishe, O-R-I-S-E, Orishe, which means head or source of being. In other words, Ori is God within you. This personal God that's guiding you, and there are other forces in you as well, that's God within you. And all African systems say God is within us. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, God's on the outside, creating externally. But all other systems, we're a miniature expression of this God force. And so when you say that you have the power to change things, you got God within you, and then you got your own personal God. And then you can call on the higher one as well, and the other ones as well. There are many more, but this is the most important one. So in the Yoruba understanding, and they've investigated this, so they've traveled to this realm and witnessed this. You hear me? To the realm of heaven. They've seen this. This ain't something they just came up with. And what have they seen? And we'll go through parapsychology next week and see if it confirms this. They have seen spirits in heaven kneeling in the presence of God and picking their portion, Ipanori, their destiny, their lot. It's their choice, not God's. This is the key point. Because if you think about life on earth, this is a free will exercise. Your free will and the free will of others. And there are others that can be here to cancel out yours. You know, political forces, spiritual forces, economic forces, military forces. You know that, you know. So I'm not telling you, oh, it's just here. Just decide you're going to do this and it's going to happen. No, baby. This is a realm of struggle. And those of you that say you don't want to struggle, hey, as long as you're alive and breathing, you're struggling. And what's wrong with that? And the key thing in the struggle of life is winning. In this case, winning your happiness. Winning because you are genuinely being yourself. So the Yoruba is saying destiny, which is your God within, the portion or lot that is picked in heaven is picked as you're on your knees in the presence of God. And what is it that you pick? You pick your life course, which is inside of you. You pick your parents, the time of birth, and the challenges that you're going to face on this earth. Ori, according to the Yoruba, has a twin quality. One, it's the essence of your personality, and two, it's your guardian. So it's both the spirit and at the same time, It's your human essence, which is spirit. African societies are very respectful, traditional, are very respectful of other people because they understand each person is a spirit force unto themselves. Respect that force because that force can be used for good or for what's negative. Respect it. Your Ori is also the way the Yoruba empower themselves to fulfill what they want to achieve in life is they regard the Ori, since it's your personal God, it's looking out for you. It's going to warn you when you have problems and try and help you. It's an object of worship. And so by worshiping the God that's looking out for you, you are basically protecting yourself, empowering yourself, and enabling yourself to be more open to favors and help in life, provided that you do the work. Here's a key thing that the Yoruba teaches this. Destiny isn't automatically achieved. But there are two key requirements. One is hard work, and two is good character. And Ifa priest, Babalaos will usually explain, well, the reason that you don't remember your destiny is, and a few people do, one or two people in this show may remember this, but most don't, because it might make us lazy. If we knew that we had a predetermined wish and a possibility of becoming something that's really exceptional, we might sit on it. And then if we also knew there were going to be these trials that were going to be extremely difficult and dangerous, we might be scared about it. You know? So most of us come in here not knowing that. And we certainly don't know when we're going to leave. I don't want to know that. Do you? I don't. So the proof that you have a destiny isn't based on, oh, you remember this choice. It is based on, do you listen to your spirit? Do you listen to your dreams? Do you listen to your wishes? And do you do something about it? So when the Yoruba refer to a person's double, they call it Enike, Enikeej, which means that your spirit double, because you have one that's in you, one is in heaven looking out for you, that is trying to protect you. So you have this double looking out for you as well. So one of the things about Ifa is it's a divination system. It carried us through enslavement. Our leaders on the plantation were diviners, by and large. And in the Catholic countries like Haiti, Brazil, Cuba, they formally assumed these in the full role of Babalaos, or whatever the particular spirit system was in the part of Africa they came from. But here in the Western Hemisphere in the United States, where Protestantism prevailed, the divining thing was key. And so the enslaved African went to his priest, his diviner. Sometimes they were women, as one person points out, fewer here than men. And that person was divining for them their future. All enslaved narratives say this: they were there to prevent whippings. Anytime you get a standard message coming from African people, and particularly those under oppression, they're hiding something, because it's always more than that. And so they had all kinds of questions. But the key ones were when they were getting ready to do something risky, like try and escape or lead a slave rebellion, or do something else that was prohibited, they wanted to get guidance. Could it work? What did they have to do to make this work? That's what was really happening. And of course, if they were sick, what could be done to heal them? And some of the longest living Africans lived during enslavement. I pointed this out before, as well as the shortest living, because the average age in the US is around 50 years, in the Caribbean, sometimes much shorter. But you had those living to 126 and 127 years. And you have enslaved Africans saying, back in those days, we lived a long time. Meaning, after slavery, we're living longer, some of us, than we are now, because we were more African. Because we knew more about the human body. We knew about cleansing and stuff like that. And a lot of you come out of families where your parents, your mothers, have had you do cleansing. I do that. It's coming from what my mother had us do for 18 years, and my grandmother, great-grandmother, had her do it. And that goes back to Africa. So some of us were actually healthier because we were more African, even though we're under the stresses and strains and hell of slavery. Now, in African systems, what's called a netter can be a divine principle, but it's usually an ancestral force, like, say, a Sar, who is a human being who gets deified to a high level, or it could be a high spirit that never left heaven, or what the Yorubas call Orishas, who were sent, according to the Ifa system, by Olodumare to this earth to perform different functions. So my Orisha is Obatala, Obatala. It's the oldest of the Orishas. It's the Orisha of wisdom. So that Orisha has that function. Different ones, Orumala. Orumala is the Orisha of divination. And that Orisha remembers and knows all of the compacts made by humans in heaven. And so when you're going to a Babalawo for a reading, and I've done this many times, they're consulting your Ori to see what's going on. And usually you're going there because you have an issue. It might be a health issue. It might be a financial issue. It might be an interpersonal issue. It might be a death issue. I've told this to people before, but those that are new haven't heard it. When I moved into this house in 1993, I get a call from my Babalawo, Ifeyemi, who was the brother on the picture of the last promotional, a master who's now an Araba, great diviner. He'd been my Babalawo for a long time. And he called me to tell me he saw me in a coffin. And he called me early in the morning. He never called me in the morning early, and he never talked about his dreams, And jokingly, I said, how old was I? Because everybody dies. I was joking because I knew he was talking about death soon. And he said, you look just like you look right now. And so we negotiated something. And then as a Babalawo, he did things. And then he came to my housewarming later in 1993 and wrote in the book, you'll live a long life. Well, I'm 83 going on 84 right now. Then I was in my 50s, 30 years ago, Now you say, how did you know that was going to happen? See, that's a typical Western thing. Well, first of all his predictions had come true before. I was in the middle of fighting to save Black studies, 80 to 82. I've told this to some people before. A lot of new ones haven't heard it. I was in the middle of a battle, and actually the beginning, 1990. Hoover Institute after us. The whole state of California's policy-making process had decided, they told the president to get rid of us. right? And I'm fighting that. If Yami didn't know, he comes to my friend's house that got me the job at State, Nansisi Kayu, who introduced us to Ifeyemi, and he gives me a reading. He said, powerful forces are out to destroy your department. Well, that was accurate. And then each year I'd see him. And then I'm in Nigeria. He's giving me the same reading. I've told this to people before. Those that haven't heard it, this is new. And he told me again, this is in 1992. And he's telling me again, they're out to destroy. I said, you're telling me what I already know. We've been fighting for 2 years. Do something. He did something. Within about 3 months, when I get back, the president gives up. Now, Ifa didn't win that battle. We won it with the help of Ifa. See, there's the principle in battle, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. If you think God is going to intervene and save you for something and you don't do anything, you are full of jive. You hear me? So, Ifeyemi has been very accurate in his divinations. Very accurate, give many more. And the final thing on this question of him telling me I was going to die is, and I've said this before, some people in Ghana wanted me to become a king. I had no interest in that. But the people who had recommended me went to their diviner, and the diviner said, I don't think that's a good idea. This man's going to die. Huh? So I'm supposed to wait and see if this is accurate, not me. And I'm even though I've done many divinations and prophecies and stuff, I don't believe everything I hear either. But within Ifa, I found it all to be accurate. But if something like I went for a life reading and the guy told me that I wasn't going to get tenured. His life reading was very accurate. He was not a Babalawo, but he was trained in Brazil in their system. Very good guy. He's white. He's very good, And he was giving me all the advice on how I could earn a living outside the university because he saw them coming down on me. He's right. If the people that were reviewing me stayed in power, I would have been denied tenure. But they actually got moved out. And then it changed. But I didn't accept that. I'm going to fight. Your divinity has the final answer on things. So I'm not into somebody that just believes something because somebody says something. I'm into the nuts and bolts, see, touch, and smell too. So this is divination. It's situational. It's dealing with your life situation as it is. Some diviners are good and some aren't so good. Some priests are good and some aren't so good, but many of them are. So the Yoruba teach that while each person gets a destiny, no two are identical. They're all original, based on your own life choices. They may be similar. They might be musicians or scientists or artists, but they're not all the same. And this may also, in part, describe why African American culture values uniqueness so much. That's because we're a creative culture. But these residuals that come out of the core of African culture may well speak to that as well. So, knowing your purpose for being is the most important thing you can know in life. You can know a lot about everything, but if you don't know yourself, then you become functionally illiterate. So we can know all about world history, all about world spirituality, we don't know our own, we're illiterate. But the key thing is we can know our history, we can know our culture, but if we don't know self at its most fundamental level, which is the level of our gifts, our strengths, and our weaknesses, the essence of our human personality, which is your destiny and your potential for destiny, because it depends on whether you move on it. That is the most important knowledge you can have because it is the reason for your being. Me, I live in this. Everything I do is focused on what I'm here for. So I'm speaking from experience. And by the way, Ori is often multifaceted and multidimensional, meaning when you're talking about someone's life purpose, someone's inner gift, you're usually talking in the plural. Alicia Keys, give an example of someone that's big, She's an artist, but she's a singer, and can she sing in the old rhythm and blues style with her hip hop update? She's a master pianist and she's a composer. She's multifaceted. Now, some are only singers, but if they are, they have other dimensions to their art, and that's the nature of destiny. It's also why Western education is so sad when it comes to addressing this, because it's designed really to put you to work. That's it. And it's okay to get a job, don't get me wrong. If it's one that conforms to your destiny, it probably won't be working for some corporation. And most blacks don't get a chance anyway. That's for white people. Very few blacks working in corporate America. But if you're working for the government, city, state, or local, or some other job, well, is it doing something good for people? Have you got your own business? You know what I mean? Whatever. But the key point is when you're looking at your wish, usually it's multifaceted. In my case, I'm a strategist. The strategist I discovered in battle. The battle was a part of being an organizer. So that's one of my purposes for being here. And then I'm a reader, but I started reading the right books. That prepared me for scholarship. I didn't have any intention of being a teacher or a professor or anything like that. And then as I undergone trials in life, it led me to deeper dimensions of the spirit. So I call myself a spirit scholar warrior. You know what I mean? But those are the wishes inside of me. So everything I'm doing, I'm happy because I'm pursuing my path. Pursue yours. And yeah, people tried to knock me off of mine. And who knows what's going to happen when you get in this battle called life? A lot of you do because you're in the midst of it. Some of you are pursuing your destinies. Or some of you have been on the wrong track and you know you need to get on the right track. Get on is what we call the good foot. That's the foot of happiness. That's the foot of joy. That's the good foot of life. You hear me? Huh? So when James Brown was on the good foot, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. He was both manifesting our culture, but he was at the same time pursuing his purpose as an artist. He had all kinds of troubles and problems. Far from a perfect person, but, he was pursuing his. So next week, I'll compare the Yoruba concept of destiny with the Akan, Kemetic, and parapsychology. So I hope you got something out of this. African systems are good, they are useful, and they can help you in your life. Many have done well without them. You do even better with them. It doesn't mean I'm not doing this to recruit somebody into Ifa. I'm not an initiate myself, but I'm not doing it for that reason. But to share a perspective that gives you a better sense of yourself. My mission on earth is to empower our people to do their thing, just as their mission has been to empower me. I mean, Everyday black folks woke this brainwashed Negro at that point up and put me on the path of consciousness. And that's what I'm encouraging with you. Be yourself. Don't be somebody else. Be yourself. Be your African self. Be your spirit self. And this is key, be the best self you can be. That's what Ustadi Kadiri, who's one of our teachers at the African Children's Advanced Learning Center, said was this goal in teaching, was to encourage his students to be their best self. And that is what you can do. Wolf Banlu is asking, how do we get the donation to you? This time we have the proper answer. Click into Cash App and then type in a $ and type in all words together, Pan African, AFRICAN, Publishers, and then make your donation, and that will go through. We got that finally straightened out. So I hope you got something out of it. This ended up being 2 hours and 9 minutes. I'm trying to cut these, but can only do what you can do. Hotep, I hope you got something out of this, and let's see what we got here. And don't forget, for people who came in late, that Ana Maria Cabral, Amilcar Cabral, the greatest leader in the 20th century, the person in the sunglasses behind me, we'll be interviewing her on July 6th, 10 a.m. Be a pre-recorded interview, but done earlier, but it'll be live after. I'll be coming on and who knows what else. And the topic is the role of African women in the armed struggle in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And Amilcar Cabral's greatest leader in the 20th century, and his wife is quite a lady. We're honoring the sisters who have engaged in struggle, armed struggle. Lao Tzu, if we forget our destiny, what system do we use to rediscover it? How do we use journey into the spirit realm to solve issues we face currently? Yeah, a lot of us get steered off course. It could be extremes like alcoholism, drug addiction. It could be just addiction to American mess, pursuing a life that doesn't accord with our inner wishes. The main thing, I think, is through listening to ourselves, listening to our inner voice, our inner spirit, and listening to those wishes that we have, that we've had as children, and deciding how we're going to deal with that. And then if you want to get into systems, there are a lot. One is the Ifa system. If someone wants to know how, for example, to hook up with my Babalawo, I can send you his email address. So click in at the bottom of the show and give me a contact. I can send it to you. Or go to people who have these spiritual gifts themselves and can tell you some stuff about yourself. But the main thing is listen to what's inside of you, your wishes, your dreams, and decide what you're going to do about pursuing them. The journey. So his other question is, how can we use the journey into the spirit realm to solve issues we face currently? Well, for Black people, our culture, and then African people globally, our culture, the spiritual and the political, or spirit and the political end, they go together. And so any kind of way in which we commune with this inner spirit, if it's through our dreams, it's through other means, it can often give us guidance. into how we move in the here and now. And so don't dismiss those. So people who are doing meditation, if you get it that way, you through your prayers, if you do it that way, through various ways of self-mastery, if you do it that way. Lao Tzu is saying, knowing when I'm going to die is very useful. Good for you. Do you know Lao? Because what I know is, even if you knew, you can get it changed. Stephen McKenzie is viewing this from Washington, D.C. Right on. So the questions here. Really want to encourage people who are new to the show, subscribe, and encourage other people to as well. Okay, Lao Tzu. How do we distinguish between destiny and the influence of the dominant culture on the subordinate culture? That's a real good question. First, we need to be able to distinguish between our culture and the culture of the oppressor, because then we'll understand, we'll have a lens through which we can view choices. And because now we're in an era of a choice between two cultures where the oppressive culture is impinging on us in a lot of ways, because socialization, family systems, communities, church and school systems have been weakened or broken, then it makes the likelihood of wrong choices greater and harder for us to make the right choices. So I think one of the most important things is you need to know your culture and have a solid grounding in humane African values. So, for example, the Western culture places the individual and money above everything else. Our culture didn't need any intellectuals to come out and give us a lecture on this. Our parents gave us this teaching: people before money, you know? So if you're grounded in culture, you'll understand that. And if you're not, you need to be. So I think culture helps us better understand the negative influences our culture coming from an alien culture, an oppressive culture. How are you able to distinguish between destiny and the influence of the dominant culture on the subordinate culture? The key thing about destiny is coming to a point where you understand what you're here to do, what your mission is, what your purpose is, or missions, plural, but usually all tied together. And it's always about helping others, advancing your people and advancing humanity. So it's always within that context. So when you discover that, if you've got a system raining down on you saying you shouldn't be doing that, like, for example, you have these Congress women, largely in Congress, who have taken a progressive stand, right? And so the whole system has come down on them, you know, Cortez and the rest of them, saying they're crazy. Bill Maher is supposed to be this great comedian. Oh, he'd love to have him on their show so he could chew him out. You understand? He's supposed to be a liberal. Well, liberal is nothing but a disguised conservative, professing something they never intend to do, you know? So these young people who are the progressive or radical wing in Congress, very few of them, they're sounding boards for a lot of things that need to happen. And so, it's going against where they're standing for, because the dominant culture that's coming on them for all the wrong reasons. You're not reaching a consensus with the conservatives, with the moderates. What does that mean? That means grounding the people into the dust, making compromises on programs they need to survive, and not putting forward programs that they need to prosper. So basically, I think in the end, when you're pursuing your destiny, you're pursuing truth. It's your truth. It's your reason for being. And your destiny is being countered when it's going counter to truth. In this case, your truth. Meaning, like if you're listening to Coltrane, it's his truth in music, you know, or Malcolm's truth in politics. I'm using the big names because people know them. So that's real key, because in the end, destiny is your inner truth. It's your reason for being. And so I have a saying, I don't give a damn. That's not arrogant. It's usually in response to somebody who's telling me to go contrary to my truth. Really? Go to hell. Wolf Manlu makes this point. Therefore, fate is fated only by your choice. The first choice to come here is symbolized by left foot forward in Kemetic statues. Yeah, symbol of royalty. Yeah, good point. Good point. In other words, destiny in the African concept does not mean predetermined. Even when I said predetermined wish, it means that in heaven, you made certain wishes, made certain choices. That's your ori. Um, when you come to earth, it's not like the Western concept of destiny is predetermined, usually by God and then by great figures who mess up history and do what they call his story. Yeah, good point. Richard Bates, this is a comment. Brother, that was an excellent point you made about how most Africans continue to practice their tribal religious spirituality, even if they practice a major religion such as Christianity. Also, it's splendid that you point out that we should not just focus on Kemet or its spiritual systems, but other parts of Africa and their systems of worship as well. Too many of us overlook these important factors, or in some instances are not aware of them. However, don't forget to do some lectures on African. I don't know what he's going to say there. Yeah, a good point. And not just on spirituality. We need to be as informed as possible on African history, civilizations, all dimensions as possible. And that includes African, Caribbean, South American diasporan cultures today as well. Brother Ogawa is referring to one of the topics we had before, Afrocentricity, making the lower logical mind the servant of the higher spirit mind. Yeah, that's real key. And I can say I was in the lower logical mind for some time, even though I had spirit insights, you know, and it was a gradual process to try and get to this higher space. Okay. Wolf Manley was talking about how the presence of whites in Chicago has increased, and the black presence has declined to 788,000. Imagine that 788,000 would be a decline, and there has been. But it also means that there's still a tremendous amount of black folks in Chicago that could be doing stuff, you know. Alex Terry is making comments about how the unhoused, the homeless are demeaned. Poverty is made a crime when there shouldn't be poverty. Got all this wealth, it's just not spread around. Wolf Manley was tying these IFA and other systems to Kemetic systems, which is true. Let's see if there's more here. Yeah, Curtis Thomas is talking about when did the spirit of competition try and take the place of spirit of cooperation. Yeah, true. M. Jewell is making the point that female babalawas aren't common in the U.S., although they were more present in Nigeria. Yeah, true. Kurt Thomas, do you think the real reason they loosen bank regulations is to mask all the money laundering the ultra rich need? Maybe. And I think also it gives them the arbitrary freedom to do whatever they want to do to get richer. And then when they bring the economy down, to get the government to bail them out with our money while they're cutting any programs that benefit us. And taking the biggest one, Social Security, if they could get it. See if there's anything new on the bottom. Brother Cinnabar made a comment. He hoped that people are getting something from spirit knowledge. Brother Cinnabar has been a major reason that this show stands up every week. He's been my main computer technician now for almost 3 years. Ann Bowles, so pleased with the content of this show and each show. I'm sure they are being appropriately archived, addressing my own struggle 100%. I fell off path long ago trying to reignite roadblocks. How does one align with an IFA? Ann Bowles, contact me on the comments that are made at the bottom of the show when people just plug into the show, and give me your email address, and I can send you Babalawo Araba Ifeyemi's email address, and you can get in contact with him. And we all get off course sometimes, and hopefully you can work back on your own. But I think understanding the power you've got within, it's in your hands to do it. You know? Lao Tzu is saying we need to be able to think for long periods of time. Got that right. Okay, I think we're about it here. Okay, Michelle Dawson, thank you too. Is there anything else here? Okay, that's it. The community teacher, make sure you subscribe and get your friends to subscribe. Okay. Until next week, Hotep, I hope you got something out of this. Look forward to sharing with you again.